Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of the BigFooty Bombercast. I'm your host, Bonser34, and as always, I am joined by TheGrizz. How are you this evening?
I'm good. A big win on the weekend, and I don't just mean the men's. A couple of really big wins on the weekend from, I think, all four of our Essendon sides, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so we will jump straight into the VFLW as a bit of a change of pace from the AFL. We'll come to that later. The VFLW, the women are into the grand final. So they, of course, on the weekend belted Casey in the second semi-final.
Wowzers.
The final score, for those that are unaware, was 11-10-76 to 139, and Casey actually scored. Casey scored 3 points in the first quarter and then didn't score again until they kicked their first major in the last. So we actually held them scoreless for 2 quarters. It was a close game at quarter time. It was 7-3 until we put on the burners in that second quarter, and then they never again recovered, did Casey. So we do play them in 2 weeks' time. So they, of course, will be into the preliminary final. I'm talking about Casey now, obviously. They are into the preliminary final this weekend.
Against the Saints.
Yes. So and it's not technically not St Kilda. They call themselves the Southern Saints, so I believe they are still affiliated, obviously, with the St Kilda Football Club, but they are they're not. It's sort of like the Casey Demons, I suppose, are affiliated with. So for anyone interested now. Interestingly, last time we played Casey, we actually beat them by a goal. So I think the result, whilst exciting, I don't think it was totally unexpected. I've actually read that there's quite a few VFLW sides have lost a number of AFLW players because obviously the AFLW season is coming in later this year. So the finals, unfortunately, sides like Casey and Hawthorn, amongst others, have lost a couple of players for the VFLW. But we haven't seemed to have done that. I think that's largely because a lot of our VFLW girls are going to play for our AFLW. So we're just going to build the confidence. So
go from a VFLW premiership into an AFLW premiership. But the girls have been rock solid all year. When I say rock solid, I mean on top of the ladder with a percentage of 362. So they've been absolutely smacking the living daylights out of their opposition, and they're straight through to the grand final. By this week, I think, they're not playing them in this week. It's obviously, like you said, Casey and St Kilda, but well done to the girls. It's good to see at least one Essendon team pulling their weight and up to the top of the ladder where we like to see them. Yeah,
so the Saints will be an interesting one because we did draw with the Saints earlier in the year and then we beat them by 10 points, I believe, in the return fixture. So, and it was good to see Georgia Nanscowen, amongst others. She led the way with 25 disposals. She's obviously going to play for our AFLW side, and I think we sort of tipped that she may be the first ever AFLW captain as well. Frederica Frew kicked 3, again, another player that's going to end up playing for our AFLW side. So it is good to see the AFLW listed players dominate, I suppose, on the big stage in preparation for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I must profess, I keep a loose eye on it. Law, who's another one of our mods, lives and breathes the VFLW, so I've been sort of living it vicariously through her a little bit. But like I said, it's great for the girls to have a reward and get through to the grand final. And we might need to get see if we can get Laura or a crowded house back for a bit of a preview next week.
Yeah, so we will hopefully discuss that a little bit more next week, the preview, once we know who exactly they are playing. And also we'll have our celebratory podcast after they win the flag, of course. but we will... Grizz, we will turn to the AFL now, and it was a very, very surprising Essendon that turned up for 3.5 quarters on Friday night. And I say for 3.5 quarters because for the first half of the third quarter, it looked like they'd reverted to the form we'd seen in previous weeks.
Oof. Yeah, look, it was a rough first 15 minutes, that third quarter. I was sitting there dreading, thinking, they're not going to come back, are they, at halftime? And they did, but credit to the lads for fighting back. I think they kicked 5 straight and we kicked the next 6. So it was a weird old game. St Kilda looked like they'd forgotten to rock up and we sort of jumped them to begin with. But really surprising result. Happy to win. I would like to put my hand up and sincerely apologise to Ben Rutten for trashing his selections on Thursday night. Turns out they were inspired. I thought our defence held up really well. It won enough one-on-ones, and having sort of smaller, faster players around the ground seemed to work because we were able to put enough pressure around the ball that they'll sort of not great inside 50s for St Kilda. And then our smaller, more mobile backline just sort of waltzed it out. And all of a sudden, St Kilda looked a bit top-heavy at times between sort of Marshall and King and Membry and Ryder. And, you know, who knows? It worked, but Jane Laverty and Jordan Ridley specifically played fantastic roles in defence. But thought our midfield stood up. I thought Caldwell and Shield were fantastic. Caldwell specifically, like, he didn't have huge disposal numbers, but I'm just looking at this. He had 13 contested possessions. He had 7 clearances, 7 tackles, all of which were game highs. He was fantastic. And Dylan Shield was back to his best. So, you know, when your midfield's on top and your defence is winning their one-on-ones, it just makes a world of difference.
Yeah. Look, we can discuss this in a little bit of detail because you've sort of raised it now. And that is, of course, our decision to not pick a key position defender. I mean, don't get me wrong, Laverde is now a defender, but he's certainly, I still don't think he's tall enough to take on Max King if St Kilda's delivery had been anywhere what we'd seen for the rest of the year. So I'm still bemused, puzzled by our decision to not play a key position defender. I think, you know, dropping Zach Reid, I thought was pretty stiff. If it was to bring in someone like Zach Thatcher or even Cody Brandt, then, you know, I'd understand. We're giving everyone a shot. But to drop him and not bring anyone in at all against what was a very tall St Kilda forward line was something that was, I mean, he really did roll the dice, Truck. And to his credit, you know, the winners write history, as they say. But I don't think you can completely dismiss the concerns that we had when those teams came out.
Yeah, I in hindsight, I think it was probably a circuit breaker in that, look, what we're doing isn't working as a whole. We need to generate more bounce off half back. So this was sort of the nuclear option to produce that. So when you have McGrath as a full-time defender, and can we just leave him there forever? Can we give up on the midfield thing? But when you got Redmond and McGrath and Hind and Massimo D'Ambrosio, and we'll get to him in a minute, he was fantastic on debut. There was just a lot of bounce out of defence, which got our ball movement game going and sort of got our attack going. So it was really just about, can Laverty and Ridley win enough 1v1s to allow our smaller defence to walk it out in the manner we did. But I do agree that long-term, I don't think it's a strategy you could probably pull off. If you play no key defenders against Geelong or against a team like Brisbane, you're probably going to get absolutely belted because they move the ball far better.
As good as our pressure was, St Kilda's inability to deal with it was appalling.
Yeah, they were very bad, yeah.
For a side that has gone out and recruited in the manner that St Kilda has done, and to me, it's a path that I think many Essendon fans probably hoped that we were going to follow at one stage. And I'm talking about going out and getting the Brad Hills, the Crouch, the Paddy Ryder, the Membry. Well, not so much Membry, I suppose, but you know what I mean. They've gone out and got some of these older players, even Hanbury, although, you know, I mean, Hanbury's probably the worst pickup of all time at the moment.
That might be the worst recruit of the last 6 years.
Yeah, if anyone ever feels bad about giving up 2 first-round picks for Dylan Shield, just remember we didn't pay $800 for Hanbury to do rehab and never play. So, you know, I just look at St Kilda and go, they should be top 4. And their list profile screams this is their chance now. And we obviously hadn't been that great. And literally, they obviously didn't expect Essendon to turn up. And then when Essendon turned up and put the pressure on, they fell apart. And the other problem they had was when they did come back in that third quarter and they started to front run and look like they were going to run over the top, the second that Essendon sort of took the pace off the game again, controlled the ball, and then counter-attacked, they fell apart again. It was just that little bit of pressure from a side that hasn't really been that great this year. And St Kilda just had no answers, which was just embarrassing. Yeah,
so I had this thought watching them, and we'll get to some positives in a minute, Essendon fans, don't worry. But I had the thought that they reminded me of us in 2017. So you have the Mercurial young forward in King, who was sort of mirror of Danaher. You have enough good soldiers in defence. You have a pretty good ruck combination. You've got a midfield, which is probably just, if you think about our 2017 midfield of Watson and Heppel and the young Zach Merritt and stuff, we were 2 to 3 good players short of actually doing anything that year. And we tried to go out and get those players, which is what St Kilda's sort of tried to do but failed. And so there's a bit of 2017 Essendon about them for me, and I wonder what their ceiling is. I don't think they're a top 4 team on looking at their list. Now, granted, they're missing a few players. They're missing Jack Steele, who's an out-and-out gun. Zach Jones is a handy player for them, and he's only a couple of weeks back. They've got a bit of cattle to come back, but I don't really see them as a top 4 team. But even as a top 8 team, that's not what they dished up against us. They looked like they were, in the bottom 4 or 5 on the ladder where we are, to be honest, the way their sort of effort started. But I wanted to ask you about our forward line. How does it feel for you to have finally what looks like to be a semi-functional forward line set up? I mean, between Wright and Jones and Stringer up there, all of a sudden we just look a bit more composed, a bit more structured ahead of the footy.
Yeah, and I think that was always going to be somewhat of the case. And I think we've sort of levelled that off before that, because we've said all along, have to play 2 rucks because it's either kick at the Pete or there's nothing to kick to. So then you put in, Harrison Jones and your Jake Stringer, and you're right, you do all of a sudden have a couple more targets to hit up. Even Sammy Draper's now somehow discovered that he can actually go forward. Now, Draper's still not getting a lot of the ball around the ground. I know a lot of people see that he gets and he does that ugly kick forward, and that's all they remember. They don't remember that for the other 3.5 quarters he barely touches it. But the last couple of weeks he has actually managed to push forward. He clunked that mark and kicked the goal. He got that free kick in the goal square, obviously, and kicked the one to go the 2 that he kicked the week before against Carlton. So he's actually starting, I think, to realise that just winning, 35 hit-outs isn't enough. Like, you need to be able to do a little bit more. And I also think that, having Phillips in the ruck does sort of allow him to do that, because if you look at the hit-outs, Draper only had 15 because I said he'd been going at 30-odd hit-outs beforehand. But the fact that he was able to go forward and rest and be another target up forward, it just gives us another string to our bow. And look, I still think Nick Bryan was incredibly stiff. And I think that what you said originally about bringing Phillips in is a short-term measure to win games. I think that still stands true. But
I'd agree.
I do like seeing Draper not have to be the man for 95% of the 4 quarters. Because the problem we had was when we were just playing Draper and Wright, if Wright was the one going in the ruck to give Draper the chop out, then Draper was going forward, which means that Draper was still the man, but just in a different part of the ground. And I just don't think he can do that for 4 quarters.
His tank still probably isn't there to be the workhorse. And he may not ever be that type of ruckman. He may not ever be the workhorse ruckman, the Todd Goldstein that can play 80% game time in the ruck and get through there because he's such an aerobic athlete, right? Draper looks far more of an explosive type player.
Shane Mumford.
Shane Mumford. No, he's far more athletic than Shane Mumford ever was. I think he's far more explosive than Shane Mumford was. I think he's far more. I think him playing 50% ruck time is really his sweet spot, which is why Brian's development is crucial, I think. Because if you can play both of those guys and they can switch forward, bench, then I think whereas, Brian might end up be that workhorse ruckman that wants 90% game time. So who knows? But he may never be that aerobic athlete. But I would take what he did on the weekend. If you said every week he's going to, not necessarily the 2 goals, but more the presenting and the physicality forward of centre and the marking, I'd take that performance every week from Sammy Draper. At this point in his career, obviously getting better, but I think the last few weeks he's sort of found a bit of form, and it's all been about his aggressiveness, both in the contest on the ground and his tackling, but more importantly, at least his crashing packs in the air. And that's his one word at the moment, is his size and his aggressiveness.
Yeah, look, when I say Shane Mumford, obviously he's got that burst of pace and can bounce the ball, which obviously Mumford doesn't do it. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think Draper does that occasionally. He doesn't do it all that often. I mean, the clumsy aggression is very much Shane Mumford, and I think that is what Sammy is. I don't think he's a targeted aggression. I think the more bumps he puts on, we'll start to see the occasional suspension because the big man got a little clumsy and just crushed the little bloke.
But even, I think Mumford's not a bad comparison in the sense that Mumford didn't play his best football when he was the one-out ruckman. He always seemed to play his best when, Geelong were playing him and, I don't know, Mark Blake, or him and another ruckman with him, like him and Mark Blitzabs, or him and, insert second ruckman in there. And so there might be a bit of credence to that, which is probably why Nick Bryan, and we keep saying it, is so crucial as a prospect. And I think you and I are on the same boat. The quicker we can get Bryan and Draper in together for a long stint of time, the better. So there must be a reason why they don't think Bryan is up to, 20 weeks of AFL football at this point. But, who knows? I did want to ask you about two young guys who played this week. One made his debut in Massimo D'Ambrosio, who looked like he had played about 100 games. And the other one was Ben Hobbs, who 22 disposals and the rising star nod this week. Both really impressive. Hobbs seems to have taken that half-forward flank role with both hands and said, okay, I'm not playing midfield, but I'm in the seniors. I'm just going to sort of attack it as best I can. And then Brozo's run off half-back, as was that mosquito fleet coming as a defence, was sort of crucial at different points.
I'll answer that. So I will just point out, though, you did say Mark Blitzarves for Shane Mumford. Shane Mumford actually left the Cats in 2009, well before Blitzarves ever got there, Grizz. But you were right. He does generally play well with the second ruckman.
Who am I thinking of then? I don't know. Anyway, regardless,
it's the bloke who cried after the 2007. Mark Blake. Blake.
Yeah, Blake? I did say Mark Blake.
Is it Mark Blake
as well? Anyway,
moving on. D'Ambrosio, I thought, was very good. Some of his kicks were just ridiculous. There was one there, I think, at one stage he took the ball and he kicked it sideways. And I was watching the game I was actually watching the game on my phone at the local RSL because they didn't have it on TV, and me and my father and father-in-law were there for a birthday. So he actually kicked it across ground, and both of them went, "Oh, they kick it across ground," but he was actually threaded the needle sort of almost perfectly, and he hit whoever it was in the chest. And I apologise, I can't remember who it was because it's not easy to watch the game on the phone all the time. But yeah, like stuff like that, his kicks were just really good at times. He looked polished. He looked shy. He looked like he had all the time in the world. I am wary of pumping him up too much because he does have that new player's shine on him still.
Yep, that's fair.
In that, we love him because he was new and he did something different, and he was in a game. He was involved in a game that we won, so everybody automatically looks better. But he did, I think, provide a perfect foil for Nick Hind, because our game plan this year has seemed to be either give it to Nick Hind to run or we move incredibly slowly. And you and I talked about that in pre-season, where we were actually celebrating the fact that we weren't just expecting Hind to run and gun it at all the time. But by throwing that extra option down there, obviously it then meant that Hind was able to run and gun it and have some coverage. And it also meant that Mason Redmond was able to be a little bit more daring and attacking with the ball. So I thought he was definitely a great inclusion into the side. Interesting stat, Nick Hind's actually second for bounces taken this season behind Adam Sard, which...
Yep, I believe that.
Which, considering that Nick Hind has had a quiet season by his standards compared to last year, that's still an incredible stat. And considering how slow we've moved the ball, it does show that he's still trying to take the game on at times. So so I just wanted to point that out because I think that's an incredible shout out to him. In terms of Ben Hobbs, how much better would he look if he had a left foot? Just quietly. Jakey Stringer might want to take him down to about 15, 20 metres out from goal and just show him how to swing onto the left and kick it, because if he had a left foot, he would have kicked 4 goals on Friday night.
Oh, that drove me nuts.
And I only point out Stringer because literally about 2.5 minutes later, Stringer picked the ball up, went to go on his right and went, "Oh shit, I'm being smothered over here. I'll just casually swing onto my left and nurse it through the goals."
Do you reckon the coaches would have said that to him after the game, mate? Where's your left foot? But I think, look, so clearly he's 19. He's got plenty that he can work on. But I thought,
Yeah, no, he's 22 touches, which was really good. He managed to. The other thing that he did well for mine was the inside 50s. He had 4 inside 50s, which was really good. Of his 22 touches that he had, only 5 of them were contested. So it does show that I think what you're saying is right. He's taken that half forward role. It's funny because I still remember him being in a lot of contested space, and I think he looked like he had all the time in the world. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of those 17 uncontested possessions were uncontested because he made them uncontested, if that makes sense.
Yeah, his hands at ground level are really good.
Very clean.
So if you can pick the ball up one touch in a contest, it looks like you've got more time because you literally do. You're not stopping, bending over, picking it up or fumbling it, which costs you half a second, which invites the pressure. And so when you're really clean below your knees, which he is, he looks really good. Just with D'Ambrosio, I think he looks good. So there's this stat called effective disposal. So it's better than disposal efficiency because with disposal efficiency, if you kick it 45 meters plus, and provided the other team doesn't intercept market, it's deemed an effective disposal. So this effective disposal stat looks at how many targets did you hit. So he had 15 disposals, D'Ambrosio, and of those 15, 12 were deemed effective disposals. So with his 15 touches, he hit the target on 12 of them, which is really good. Like you think about, okay, so he's running at basically 90% efficiency, which is pretty good for a first gamer. But yeah, I thought they were both really good. I think Hobbs was rising star on this week, wasn't he?
He did. He got it this week. So Ambrosio probably considered himself a little bit stiff. But the other young player I do want to talk about is a man who actually spent the least amount of time on the ground for an Essendon player. And it might surprise you to find out that was Jai Caldwell, considering the impact he had on the game. I thought...
he was outstanding.
Yeah. And look, we said earlier in the... I said it... I'll pat myself in the back. I said earlier in the year after the preseason that if he continued on the vein we saw in the preseason, that we'd understand why GWS had cracked the shits about how he was coming across. And I think we definitely saw on Friday night the play that GWS thought they had. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him. But we'll just quickly move away from the specific itself.
Yeah, sorry, with Caldwell, I just want to run through the stats again. So he had 23 disposals, which wasn't the highest in the ground, but his tackles, contested possessions, and clearances all led the field. So he didn't get the 35 or the 31 touches that Jack Sinclair or Jade Gresham got, but he was winning at the coalface. And we won the ruck contest and we won the clearances. And that's, St Kilda couldn't get their game going with their dual rucks, which they love to get going. And that's why I think we won the game. We jumped them to begin the game.
Talking of clearances, and this sort of leads in nicely to what I'm about to say, and it's the elephant in the room at the moment, I think, for the Essendon Football Club, and it's an elephant in the room that's only going to keep getting louder, and there are a lot of people out there, and look, I mentioned this somewhere other than our board on Friday night, Saturday morning, and it was like I shot Bambi, and that is that Dylan Shield had 25 disposals, 7 clearances, 5 tackles, looked like a star. He looked like the player that we spent 2 draft picks on. And largely it came about because Darcy Parish did not play.
Okay.
So the elephant in the room at the Essendon Football Club at the moment is how do you get Dylan Shield, Darcy Parish, Jai Caldwell, and even Zach Merritt all on the same page, all able to get enough midfield minutes that they can all successfully contribute to the game?
So just to be really clear, so I saw you posted a sort of a cryptic post on the Darcy Parish set after the game, like, this could be interesting or something. And it launched into this, should we trade Parish hypothetical. Where do you stand on the trade Parish bandwagon? Just to put our cards on the table.
Yeah, look, the problem with trading someone like Darcy Parish is an insanely good footballer, and we've said before that he's had the Tom Mitchell games, so to speak, where he had 40 disposals and didn't do much with it. But at the end of the day, he still got his hand on the ball 40 times, and you can't do that unless you're a good player. Nathan Buckley, I didn't even notice Tom Mitchell played. He tore them apart. So the problem with trading somebody like Darcy Parish is he's an insanely good midfielder. And you do not trade insanely good players unless you get something back. So the only possible way I could ever see us trading Darcy Parish would be if it was to get somebody like a Josh Dunkley, or dare I say, a Tom Green from, I said Tom, not Toby, from GWS. You know, that big
I wouldn't mind Toby. Like if we were to get Toby Green, that wouldn't be bad.
Oh, yeah, but I still wouldn't trade different player Darcy, so you wouldn't be trading him. The only way you trade Darcy Parish is if you can get a replacement into that midfield that will be basically ready to go right now and will essentially make the balance of the midfield better. Because look, you take Darcy Parish out, you put Josh Dunkley or you put Tom Green into that midfield. I don't think our midfield is worse off. I think it's better off. I think the balance is better. I think we have that inside bull that we've been crying out for so long. The problem I've got for trading Darcy Parish when you're talking about it, and so trading Darcy Parish in isolation, only if you can get something like that. The problem with trading Darcy Parish out to get Dylan Shield into the game more is that Dylan Shield will be 30 years old next year. So it is the most short-sighted move of all time to trade out a Darcy Parish who's going to be a gun for the next 6 years to get maybe 1 or 2 good seasons out of Dylan Shield.
Okay. Yep. So for the record, my position on Dylan Shield and Darcy Parish can only play well when the other one isn't in the team is a position that lacks nuance. So I would argue that over the last 2 to 3 weeks, the entire mix of our midfield has changed generally. So, you know, we started the year with Merritt, Parish, Shield, McGrath, Caldwell, with Parish and whoever, Martin, chipping in at different points. Since that time, McGrath's basically gone back to a full-time defender, which is where he belongs. Merritt is starting in the centre circle, but he's then transitioning to like this halfback quarterback role, basically halfway between the centre circle and the centre halfback line. Playing this sort of, you know, the money kick at the moment is not the kick to go deep inside 50, it's a kick before that to transition from defence into your attacking half. And so he's sitting there sort of as the quarterback, halfway between centre backs and the circle, as that kick forward to set us up. And so he's not actually playing a lot in the contest, which is, you don't really want him there because he's such an elite kick. You don't want him digging the football, ferreting the football at the bottom of the pack. So we haven't seen enough football, I think, to know whether Shield and Parish can exist together the way our midfield and we set the ground up currently over the last few weeks, because Parish has been injured and Shield's been playing well, obviously. We have enough of a body of work to know that 5 I mentioned before, being Merritt, Shield, Parish, McGrath, Caldwell, as a 5-man mix, lacks balance. But what does it look like with McGrath as a defender, Merritt playing more of an outside sort of sweeping wing role, like I said, and sort of Martin and Perkins and Stringer chipping in at centre bounces, but then going forward again? We don't know. So before we even entertain trading Darcy Parish or Dylan Shield, I want to see how that works first for the next 9 weeks, 8 weeks, whenever Darcy gets back. So that's how I feel about the Shield can only play well if that Parish isn't there, and Parish can only play well if Shield isn't there. I think that as a 1-for-1 sort of evaluation lacks nuance. So I'll start there. But in terms of the so you trade Parish, there's a list of 7 players in my mind which are untradeable. Basically, if someone calls up and says what it would take for this person, you hang up the phone. It's just not happening, right? Those 7 players are Cox, Perkins, Reed, Hobbs, Merritt, Jones, and Ridley. Okay, so they're the untradables. The next rung of player is I need a Godfather offer. So, like, yes, we would possibly trade them, but we would need to overwhelmingly win the deal. And Parish is in that boat of, if we're going to trade Darcy Parish, we're going to have to get an offer where we look at it and go, wow, okay, it's going to be really hard to turn down. And that's 2 first-round picks. Not necessarily 2 top 10s, but 2 first-round picks, for example. But even then there's a risk, because you pick someone in the top 10 or somewhere in the first round, hoping, like you said, that there'll be a gun like Darcy Parish is. So you're taking a step back, really, unless you use those picks to pick up another person. If the strategy was, okay, we're going to get 2 really good picks for Parish, and then we sign Angus Brayshaw on a really, heavily front-ended deal because we've got a bazillion dollars in cap space, I'd get it, because that balances up the midfield. we keep some experience and we get some picks to, use in other areas of the ground. But I think that's all entirely really premature. And I think we need to get to the end of the year and see how the midfield mix, works over an entire season. If we're going to trade one of them, I would still, like you said, trade Shield over Parish because of the age thing. But you're going to get better offers for Parish, especially as a pre-agent. But I think any talk of trade at the moment is really premature and it sort of lacks nuance until we know what it looks like, the way we're setting the ground up differently over the last month.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm only trading Parish as if you get into a like-for-like replacement now. You can't do it for pick. And the reality is, if we do want to get someone like a Josh Dunkley or a Tom Green, or take another inside bull that we need to trade for. If you want to trade them, we have to get rid of somebody that gets us the currency to do it, because we cannot trade our first round draft picks because they are far more valuable to us right now.
Pick three's off the table. Any deal whether the opposition says pick threes, we want pick three, then you walk away. It's not worth it. I agree completely.
Oh, look, the final thing I'll say is part of the reason why we look so much better, and a lot of people are going, we looked better because we didn't have Darcy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the reason, part of the reason we looked so good on Friday night was because they obviously have midfield ran the other way. Caldwell, Merritt, Shield, they all laid tackles, they all put pressure on, they all did stuff they hadn't done before. And Parish being there doesn't stop Dylan Shield, doesn't stop Zach Merritt, doesn't stop Ben Hobbs, Jai Caldwell, whoever else you want to throw him, doesn't stop them from laying tackles. So, 100%. So pointing to the game and going, we looked better without Darcy is very simplistic. But yeah, as I said, it's interesting and it's going to be the elephant in the room, I think, for a while until it's resolved. Can Darcy and Dylan play in the same side? But Grizz, that will do us for this evening, mate. It's been a good chat as always. We didn't actually get to our best 22 of 22 line this week. We did get a couple of nominations for the half-back line, but we'll save that till next week and hope that we get a few more during the week.
Yeah, hoping so. But I'm really hoping we can back up this week against West Coast. West Coast have gotten a few good players back, and they've definitely got Liam Ryan. They might be getting Nick Newey back this week, but I'm really keen to see whether we can back up that performance with another win, because in reality, this is an entirely winnable game for us, and I think we should be going all out to win it.
Absolutely, especially since pick one is on the line for the Eagles, so who knows if they'll be going all out to win it. But thank you once again, and as always, guys, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the podcast on all your socials so that we know, A, that you're listening, and B, what you would like to hear in future episodes.